You've landed on The Substance. I'm your host, Philip Marinello, and I'm so happy you decided to join us, whether it's your first time or your 190th time. Wow, we're getting up there. Or somewhere in between. We're so happy that you decided to press play and hang out with us here. Here at The Substance, we're looking to have conversations that help us all better appreciate goodness, truth, and beauty. Previous guests include folks like Film Spotting's Josh Larson, Joe Lynch, Ramina Dugo, actor-director John Carroll Lynch, Dan McCoy of the Flophouse podcast, and our pals over at Letterboxd, Slim and Mitchell. This week, we are doing a feed drop as we kind of try to get back on our regular schedule of about 3 episodes a month. This was a conversation that I was delighted to have earlier this year over at the projection booth with host Mike White and Robert Bellissimo on a hard to find, still somewhat obscure Brazilian film, O Pagador de Promessas. It's an incredible movie, as you'll hear in the conversation. This actually won the Palme d'Or and then kind of got lost. So hopefully the conversation we had over at the projection booth and hearing a few other people kind of have this come on their radar, hopefully this film will get more of the attention and acclaim it deserves. It's a wonderful movie. I don't want to spoil anything at all for you, so really, really excited to share this episode with you. We'd also like to invite you all to subscribe or follow the show on your podcast app of choice. Looks like a lot of the people who listen don't follow the show. If you hit that button, it just helps give you a notification when the new episodes drop, and it helps more people find the show, as well as if you like it, hit the 5-star button, do all those good things. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Mike and Robert on O Pagador de Promessas.
Welcome to the projection booth. I'm your host, Mike White. Joining me once again is Mr. Philip Marinello.
Hey, everybody.
Also joining us is Mr. Robert Bellissimo.
Hello, Mike and Philip. Thanks for having me back.
This week, we're looking at the 1962 film from director Anselmo Duarte, O Pagador de Promessas, also known as The Given Word. It's a Brazilian drama based on the novel by Dias Gomes. The film tells the story of a man who has traveled over 20 miles from his little village to the big city, making a promise to a saint that he'll walk all the way there with a cross on his shoulder, if only his best friend, a donkey named Nicholas, is saved. This film looks at propriety, religion, class, just all those kind of things that we love to discuss around here. So, Philip, was this a first-time watch for you?
I will say, I don't know when this episode will be published, but a little bit of whiplash, projection booth style. Last time I was on, a month or two ago, we talked about a very silly and fun B movie about a killer fish. And I didn't really look into this movie before I pressed play. And I was like, oh, this is like a substantive cinema. This is right up my alley. But I was not ready for what I saw. But spoiler alert, I thought this was phenomenal. But yeah, I was unaware of this.
No killer fish in this film. And Robert, how about yourself?
This was a first time for me as well. I hadn't even heard of it before. I liked it a lot the first time, and I watched it again. I think the second time it really actually blew my mind. And to think that it won the Palme d'Or in 62, and that was like, that year you had La Cliché, The Exterminating Angel, you had Cleo from 5 to 7, like these masterpieces that people talk about endlessly. But yet this film is so obscure. Like I found so little about it. So I'm looking forward to diving in with you guys.
Yeah, I had like 3 or 4 friends on Letterboxd who had this log. And then immediately it's like, winner of the Palme d'Or. So like, I was like, okay, I need to pay attention. I didn't realize that's what we were doing.
Yeah, I have never heard of this film before. I was doing a lot of searching last year as far as interesting movies that people don't talk about or great foreign films and just kind of scouring these, love them or hate them, but listicles sometimes actually work. And this was on one. And I said, I had never heard of this film before. I heard it was Brazilian. I had done a series of Cinema Novo a few years ago. Really enjoyed that. This was a lot earlier before the Cinema Novo movement happened, which was kind of cool. But this is right around the time of the French New Wave. And I feel like there's a little bit of influence there. Yeah, completely obscure to me. It's a little tough to search up because The Given Word isn't a direct translation. I don't know why it's called The Given Word. The Promise Keeper is the literal translation. I think that's a much better title than The Given Word. But yeah, what a fascinating story this is. It's so compelling, and it just grabs you right from the beginning. We've got this kind of interesting prelude with all this local music, and then to cut to this guy carrying across this kind of barren landscape with his wife, and you're like, what the hell is happening?
Well, in the first image, I went back, Robert, and rewatched part of it as well. I don't know how literal it was supposed to be or what, but the first image we actually see of him, like this house is on fire behind him, and he's like walking. And I was like, wait a second, I don't remember that from the first time I watched it, but when I queued it up to play it again and like watch certain scenes, I was like, what's going on?
Yeah, I think it was like a foreshadowing of what was to come for him. And I mean, I think what's so fascinating about the film is that if you're a religious person, I mean, I was brought up Catholic. I would consider myself agnostic now. But, you know, if I lean into my Catholic beliefs, I can look at this film from purely a spiritual angle, and you cannot shake his faith. And, you know, you can really lean into, is that pimp the devil who like sleeps with his wife? You know, is the fire like the devil like gonna be following him the whole time, or is that Santa Barbara? Or you can, if you're totally, you know, atheist, you think this guy's just insane.
This was such a well-written movie. I'd never heard of the story, and I did a little Letterboxd IMDb search of both the writer and the director, and maybe some stuff was lost and maybe some hidden gems in there, but a lot of the other stuff they did not look like it made much of a splash at all. And then you have this like spectacular thing that feels like an immense hidden gem. It won the Palme d'Or also.
It was at one time recognized, and now it's like, we're very film literate, I would think. And, you know, the three of us like, what the hell is this movie? It's like, yeah, no, it's not. You mentioned The Exterminating Angel. We just did an episode about that. Like, that's obviously something that has carried through since 1962. That didn't win the Palme d'Or. How come this movie that did is, for us, lost to time?
The only thing I can think of is maybe because it's a deeply spiritual film, so it's not necessarily universally relatable. But then again, you look at, you know, Joan of Arc, the film, and everyone, I mean, that's a very similar Christ-like figure, and everyone talks about that movie. I don't know. For some reason, it got lost in the cracks.
In addition to being like a deeply spiritual and religious movie, it's a deeply social and political movie that, watching this in 2025, I was like, man, you throw this on the rep cinema rounds, I think this will do very well with people, cinephiles, regardless of their religious affiliation.
It's so beautifully filmed. It looks amazing. And the print that I got to see, the version, looked incredible. I'm like, this is ready for Blu-ray. Come on, let's get going here. This is not
on Radiance. Let's do it.
The location they found, I think it was Salvador, Brazil. This location with the main thoroughfare and then the church that's up all of these steps, and just those steps become this amazing metaphor of this poor guy Zay just going up and down these steps constantly and trying to make his way inside of the church. Because the simple version of the story is, this guy made a promise. He said, hey, listen, if you save my best friend, I will carry this cross all the way from my little village to this church on the day of the celebration of Saint Barbara, and I will bring the cross inside and I will give my blessing and all this. And this is my promise to you, Saint Barbara. Then it becomes, okay, well, who's your friend? When he finally makes his way up to the door of the church and starts talking with the priest, like the day after, because he gets there at night. And that whole story, how he's telling the whole story about his best friend, Nicholas. And when they reveal that Nicholas is a donkey, I was like, okay, is that going to be the final straw? No, it's that in Brazil, there is a mixture of native religion, like the religion brought over by the Africans, because there's an incredible mix of people in Brazil. And those gods that they have in that religion would get kind of mixed up with Catholic religion. And that was such anathema to the priest. He's like, no, you can't come into this building. There's no way I'm going to allow this. This is sacrilege. And that becomes the whole central struggle to the film. It's great.
That in and of itself, the version I watched had a little scroll at the beginning that, especially the second time, made a little bit more sense or added some context. That's fascinating. So, especially sociopolitically, like, it wasn't just, oh, over time, things got mixed and melded as a pluralistic society does. It was a survival mechanism that when the Africans who were in Brazil, primarily as slaves, wanted to try to stay faithful to their religion, they did it and basically exchanged the names. Like when they would pray to their deities, they would be like, oh, this is St. Christopher. This is St. Barbara. This is St. Matthew. The movie described it as like the spirits got confused, which is in and of itself, like that's all you need to say narratively. So it's these people trying to keep their identity in an oppressive system, like outwardly acquiesced to Christianity, Catholicism, while maintaining their religion, and this unintentional melding. And that's a fascinating, like you could write a thesis on that in and of itself.
Yeah, at the beginning, as they're dancing and there's like the celebration and we see Zed praying. Yeah, there's that screenshot of what their religion is, candomblé. I hope I have that right. They tell you what it is. And then we have that conversation between Zed and the priest where, you know, Zed tells him exactly what he did, that he prayed to Santa Barbara and the connection.
Yeah, honest to a fault. Guy did not need to say all that crap. Because like you're in, drop the cross off and leave, my guy.
He's just so open. I don't know if it's naivete, but yes, he's super pure. And that he's doing this all of love for his donkey. I mean, his name is Zé de Burro, the main guy's name, you know, like Zé, the donkey. And so Nicholas, you know, like how he talks about like, oh yeah, people see me with Nicholas and they're like, oh, there goes Zé with his burro, ba, 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 you know. And he's like, I don't mind though. It's okay. Nicholas is my best friend. It's like all done out of purity. And he just really, you know, he's so open with the priest, just like, yeah, and then I tried this and this happened. And he's just such a lovable guy.
It's like, don't be mad. But like, I also, they're like, I had everybody pray for me basically to cover my bases, see what worked. And now he's like, wait, you prayed to everybody, not just us?
Just from a writing standpoint, I wonder if they thought, oh God, I hope the audiences is going to understand this, like who are not from Brazil, because he's such an honest, innocent guy. He just lays it all out. We get the gist of it. The only thing I looked up because I thought, okay, so he went to like this other, and I was like, okay, what would and then as Zed says, oh, there's a connection between Ianza and Santa Barbara. He doesn't explain it, but you see the priest is like, no, there's no connection. So the only thing I looked up was that the connection is based on their shared association with firestorms and lightning, as well as their image as powerful female figures. We're not afraid to fight. So Zed is like, it's the same thing. And the priest is like, no, it's not the same thing. You know, but you get the bit. You might, you know, someone may want to probe a little deeper and understand everything. But I thought from a writing standpoint, I thought that was perfect. We get it. We know what's going on.
And then that maybe goes like, if you know that going into it, or you look it up, like the fire at the beginning, you can kind of group that together, at least thematically.
The whole thing of him being so open and so naive and just driving his wife crazy, and especially his wife who doesn't really need to be there. Once she realizes like, oh, I wasn't part of the promise. Like, what the hell did you do? I just walked 21 miles for you.
That caused so many problems. If she just left her at home, take care of the farm, I'll be back in a week. Like, man, didn't need to happen.
Unless he had to burn down the farm on the way there. That amazing image with the fire and everything. That's one for the ages.
I initially thought that her part was pointless, but then I thought, well, actually, no, because if we're leaning into the spiritual side of things and like they shot a big fire at the beginning, there's got to be a purpose for it, right? And like if there's this character who's this pimp who sleeps with her, you know, at first I thought, well, why did we need any of that? But again, if we're leaning into these spiritual aspects, is this guy just cursed from the minute he starts going there? She believes that it's Santa Barbara forcing her to do this. And then, you know, he's like, well, she's like, maybe I'm making an excuse. But I thought that was interesting. You know, you can really kind of lean into the spiritual aspects of the film. And he does wind up dying, you know. So is he completely cursed, or is this just the fault of everyone there?
Yeah, and that's wide open. And especially like viewing that now, I don't think it is. People like to throw the term nihilism around, and I feel like a lot of people who do, like, they took like philosophy 101 and never really thought much beyond that. Like, the movie did not strike me as that, but more like a sadness on the people who are pure-hearted and who, because like it's not even that he's like, oh, everything's gonna be okay, because he doesn't even necessarily have that point of view, Zay, but rather I'm going to only do, like, I'm only going to act within this. And to a large degree, that's admirable. But when the rubber meets the road of reality, not that we give up all of our ethics and morals or things like that, but there were many times where, as somebody who is more like actively spiritual, I'll be like, guy, go away. You made your promise. The cross is there. If a priest is stopping you from fulfilling your promise, that's on him. Drop it off in the courtyard and go home. That's not on you. But again, like watching that now, like people living in this world with all these broken systems, and the movie highlights several of them. Like there's the media, there's the cops, there's the hierarchical organized religion, not just religion, but like the organized hierarchical, like they bring in the Monsignor, like that's part of the religion. You got the business people, you got the hustlers, like all of this stuff in a society together. And then this guy just very narrowly saying, like, these are the only things that I'm going to do and hope for like a good result. And it's like, I don't know how tenable that is.
That's where it really compares to like a Christ-like story, because, you know, Jesus's faith was unshakable. You know, like we mentioned earlier, Joan of Arc, you know, they'd rather die than abandon their faith. And he's the same way, you know, it's like, I made this promise. I don't want to, but in his case, you know, because I was brought up Catholic as well, and fear is such a big part of Catholicism. And so sometimes it's like he also wants to make sure he follows through with his promise because he thinks that he'll be punished. He's like, well, I don't want to go back and my donkey's dead. And so I thought it's also based on fear that it's faith and fear, which again is another layer to the film.
Well, and it's not just that Nicholas is his friend. I imagine that Nicholas somehow contributes to this man's living. He probably uses Nicholas to, I don't know, plow fields or do something. So it's like, if he breaks this promise, if he doesn't fulfill this one thing that he promised to St. Barbara, yeah, he might lose his best friend, Nicholas, but he might also lose his way of earning a wage. And the way they tell this story, too, is just masterful as far as them arriving at night. And them, the only people that are around are these night people. So the pimp and his prostitute are the ones that they interact with the most. And yeah, we see how put out the wife is, and having this very dashing pimp there, all in his white suit and everything, pretty handsome guy as well. And just like, oh yeah, I'll take care of this lady. Like, she doesn't need to sleep on these steps. Oh yeah, everything. And I love the way that you interpret him as the devil. I think that's absolutely perfect, because he's very, very, you know, oh yeah, I can definitely help you.
And he doesn't even hide it. On the rewatch, I was like, oh yeah, like the first thing he tells this guy is, oh yeah, I made a promise too, because I wanted this woman's husband out of the way. And then I didn't even make it, because then I'd be implicating the saint. Ha 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 ha. Hey, can I take your wife to a hotel? And he goes, ah, sure. And it's like, guy, like, what are you doing? Like, that's how he actively introduced, like he put that out there about himself. And this man's like, oh, honey, why don't you go with him to the hotel?
Or he's so innocent that he thought that literally the guy was just going to find a place for her to sleep. It's like, oh God, like he's totally took advantage of his innocence.
And then having that as our like little story at the beginning, and then breaking it out slowly as we go through, like, here's the next day, and we get to see more of these people that are inside of this town. And we get the little guy who I guess sells books. He looks a little Charlie Chaplin-esque to me, no mustache, but that kind of tramp look to him. And he's just almost like this little imp going around. And he's like, oh yeah, the priest doesn't want me selling books outside of the church.
Like my dirty books.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it took me a while to figure out that he was selling books. I was like, oh, okay, that's a horse of a different color.
I initially thought he meant that he had books about that religion. That's what I thought he was. I'm like, oh no, wait, no, he's not. He's way too much of a you know, sinister kind of character to be doing anything pure. You know, it's interesting because I had thought maybe this was something rooted in racism, because you see, like the priest, because he says, oh, you know, this candomblé was how the black slaves used to trick the white masters, and they would say, oh, yeah, we're praying to the saints, but really they're praying to these voodoo figures, that's the way the priest sees it. And I thought, are they against this just because these people are black? Because you notice that all the people banding around him were the African Brazilian community. And I even like those images of like they're washing the steps as he's there, I just thought, and he gave his land away to the peasants, which was part of his promise. And they band around, but then again, they're banding around it because of what the media is writing, that he's like this working class hero, not because they think he's really for them.
I think they recognize, and again, it was done so minimally and masterfully and more like show, don't tell. I think it was really like them recognizing like the underdog status, for lack of a better word. Like, this is a persecuted, like demeaned person, and it doesn't matter if we believe the same thing or pray to the same people. Like the woman, like middle-aged lady who was kind of like, who appeared to be some sort of priestess or what have you, she was his biggest champion. And he's like, no, like, I want to fulfill my thing as Saint Barbara. And she's like, all right, man, like, I'm going to help you.
Well, it's like all these people start putting things onto him. We've seen this kind of thing before in some of my favorite films, like we talked about Being There, taking the guy who lived in isolation for all these years. He is a little bit of a Chauncey Gardner type as far as like, he is so naive, doesn't have harmful thought, to me anyway, for anybody. And, everybody starts putting stuff on him. Oh, this guy's a genius. This is amazing. Or even like, The Big Dig or something, where it's a crazy person who's out there digging up the street with a jackhammer. And everybody starts to be like, well, what's this guy doing? Does he have a permit? Pretty soon it's like, oh, well, leave this guy alone. He obviously knows what he's doing. He doesn't. He just loves jackhammers. So here we have with Zay, and he's just like, I just need to bring this cross inside. I just need to leave this cross inside of this church. And then suddenly he becomes, thanks to the media, thanks to all these people that are in the city, he becomes this like folk hero. And, oh, I think he's a communist. No, he's this, he's that, like he's going to start a whole new political party. And it's like, what? He just wants to take his cross inside of the church.
Something so simple would just turned into something so ridiculous. And on the one hand, people exploit it, and then other people are afraid of it, like the priest. And you just think there's something funny about it. Like the second time I did find myself laughing at times, because it's like, it's almost satirical in a sense, the film.
Yeah, the priests, they're like, oh, so you carried this cross 7 leagues and, show me your shoulder. And his shoulder's all just torn up to hell. And then it's like, oh, do you think you're like Christ? Are you mocking God?
It's like, how could you say that? This guy clearly is devout. And you're like, I don't know, though. Are you? And literally, how hard would it have been to let him go in there, drop it off, and then when he's gone, dispose of it? How? That would have been the easiest thing in the world for them.
Even waiting between services or something. People don't even have to witness this, but you're making such a big deal out of it.
Again, it goes to how time and time again, people who have the story resembles the story of Jesus. And of course, no one believed him. And again, no one learned from that. And here's someone who's like, he's not saying he's the king of the Jewish people or something, but he's similar with his faith cannot be broken. And you think that as a Catholic priest, he would appreciate that. He would revere that. He would love to see something. But no, it's rejected. It's like, it turns into something ridiculous, right? So it's like we don't learn. In Joan of Arc, same thing. It's very similar, persecuted for similar reasons.
Yeah, Zay's devotion was stronger than anybody else's that we see in the film by a long shot. And I mean, the Jesus parallels, Jesus's most ardent enemies were also the organized religion at the time.
Yeah, the Pharisees and the priests.
Absolutely. This was also a play, which I just read, which makes sense. One location.
Oh, totally.
Like a cafe, and of course, the beginning where he's walking and the dancing. But I was like, you know what? This would be really good to do or see on. I would love to see a version of this.
This would be an incredible play.
Yeah, I'll have to Google that. I wonder if it's still done.
I like what you're saying as far as the people that support him seem to be the ones that are much closer to African descent. And so then you bring in the whole racial aspect of this film as well, where it's like, all right, so we've got these subclasses versus the upper class. And it's the upper class. It's the much more white looking people, the European descendants that are the ones that are like, oh, I got to get involved in this. I'm the the newspaper man and the photographer and all this. Like, all right, yeah, let's get in here, start making a folk hero out of this guy. And it's like, oh, I really don't think that your intentions are pure at all.
The newspapers clearly were like, well, we've already spent money on it. We are sensationalizing this in order to get more eyes and ears to sell more papers.
Right. Or he's laughed at, and he's laughed at only by the non-Black people. You don't see one Black person laugh at him in this. That was really interesting. Must have been intentional, I'm sure.
I am so curious if they must have made a prop for this cross, like something a lot lighter than the way that it looks.
Oh, totally.
Our main actor gives such an amazing performance. Oh, wow. Leonardo Villar, he is so good. And just he really makes you feel like that cross is as heavy as the one that Jesus was carrying through town. He does such a good job. And like I said, just the sincerity, you feel those emotions. Like when the priest starts yelling at him, you can just tell how disappointed he is, how sad he is, but he knows in his heart that he has to do this and that he can't enter the church. I think we already spoiled this a little bit, and I probably should have given a spoiler warning. I didn't for this one, but that he can only enter the church after he's dead and that he's on the cross when he is put in here. That shot after he gets shot with the crowd and the big open space with his body and the cross next to it. Another one. I mean, wonderful images through this whole thing, this beautiful black and white photography as well.
Incredibly strong. Yeah, when he's just sitting there on the steps, the landing in between the two steps, very cinematic, would also be great on a stage. Like that was an extremely powerful image.
And for those guys to put him on the cross and then use it as a battering ram and finally get him across the way. Oh,
because there's also this violence in him that's brewing through this. And there's that moment where he says he's going to just burn the church down because he's getting so angry. And then as soon as he says, you see the look of shame on his face. You're like, how could I have said that? It's just the nuances in his performance. I got to see him in more films because, man, this guy's an incredible actor.
Yeah, some incredible looks.
It's so much him, but then when his wife comes back, when the prostitute comes back, I was wondering if the prostitute was going to have an easier time getting into church than him, because that's the way that it feels like, oh, well, if you're staying away from what's it called? Candomblé. Yeah, you're fine with us. I don't care what you do, but as long as you're not doing that bad stuff, stay away from that.
The irony and the satire of that is those folks that they are looking down on are seeking to be faithful. And the only way they can do it because of the system is by being a little deceptive, but they're not trying to take down the Catholic Church. They're not enemies of the Catholic Church. They're just saying, hey, like we want to stay faithful to our traditions. The Catholic Church, that wasn't okay with them. So like, okay, yeah, sure, we're all Catholic. Like I'm praying to St. Barbara, like wink. And that's the only reason they're doing that to begin with. Like the Catholic Church literally created that problem.
Well, yeah, I'm always curious about the whole idea of sainthood because I don't think that they talk about saints in the Bible, do they?
Yes, but not like we tradition. A little substantive cinema hour here. I would say my understanding is that what came from the Bible, particularly in Hebrews, is nothing supernatural. It's like we look back on people who lived exemplary lives in some way. Like these are humans, not like sainthood, like some sort of perfection, but like people who did certain things that were very admirable that are worth emulating. And there are particular passages that get looked at. Like these are kind of the people that in scripture are being put forth as saints. And that idea, I think, has a lot of value. But over time, particularly when economics and business went into the church selling images of saints in order to be like, if you buy this image of the saint, then you're going to get a special blessing. All that stuff can kind of complicate things that are at their heart, have a lot of value and have purity.
I just quickly Googled, does the Bible talk about saints? And it says it does, but not in the way we do now, just mainly as like broadly defined as like someone who's a holy one. But what Philip was saying, yeah, it turned into something mythical and for business purposes and selling religion, stuff like that.
Well, I feel like it helps it go down a little bit easier. It's kind of like with Islam, where it's like, okay, yeah, we recognize like Adam and Moses and this and that. We'll build upon that. It's kind of like a nice, no offense to anybody from Islam or Christianity or Judaism, but it just feels like it is a way to make the medicine go down a little bit easier as far as like, oh yeah, we recognize all these people. Jesus was a prophet. He wasn't the son of God. He was a prophet. David was a prophet. Moses was a prophet. Noah, etc. Some of these big names. Muhammad was a prophet. Muhammad is the seal of the prophets. There's no more prophets after Muhammad, which is okay. Like we're putting an end cap on this thing, so nothing more. And then you get into Catholicism, and isn't like Peter one of the first saints? It's like, okay, this guy made major strides for our religion. He's a saint, and this person's a saint, and this person's a saint. But that's, for me, it doesn't feel like that's outside of the New Testament rather than all inside of it, as far as like, yeah, no, this is baked into our religion.
Yeah, what it has become is, and yeah, it is complex, and
well, I'm sure wars have been fought over it, been thrown out of windows over it, I'm sure.
Yeah. Look at us get crazy theological on the projection booth.
Hey, there's room for everybody.
It certainly makes you think, I mean, about all, but again, on the flip side, it's interesting because if someone is a complete atheist, I mean, you can see what's going on from his point of view, but you can also just take it from a critical point of view and just say, this guy's insane, the church is insane, everyone's insane, which is still true, even if you are more spiritual and you look at it from a couple of different ways. But the film doesn't necessarily, I mean, you feel that it's clearly on Zed's side, but I don't necessarily feel that they make the priest like a villain of the piece. I mean, you get his perspective, right? And actually, the second time I was watching it, I was finding myself empathizing more with him. It's just like, this is what this guy's been taught. This is what he knows. This is what he thinks. Even his superiors agree with him, So I like that because it doesn't just tell you, yeah, believe this guy and these guys are the antagonists, these guys are the protagonists. It is that to an extent, but I appreciate the nuance, which makes for these kind of rich conversations.
It's a unstoppable force versus the immovable object. The priest is the immovable object. This is what I believe, and it's diametrically opposed to what you believe. I cannot abide to this.
Well, it was so interesting. You brought up earlier, Mike, the conversation where it is slowly revealed. Zay's story was slowly revealed as he was walking up with the priest. When he finally revealed, oh, like we prayed to other things too. Like the priest stops him, goes up a couple steps and literally looks down on him saying, hey, this is unorthodox. Like you're out of bounds now. Like Robert was saying, there's a way to empathize with that going, hey, like I am the safeguard of like, I'm the person who's supposed to be shepherding these people, blah, blah, blah. And like, this is out of bounds. But then you go farther of like the pride of you're not meeting my standards, because it's not just about the priest's devotion to God. It's kind of about the priest going like, this is my parish, this is my church, and you're going against me. And that's where the problem is, because he could say, hey, brother, like that's a little bit out of bounds. Like, why don't you? He did not invite him in. He didn't walk with him. He didn't meet him where he was. He's like, you need to meet my orthodoxy before I show you any grace. And he escalated it and escalated and escalated it. And like, you could point out a lot of different things, but ultimately, pragmatically, like, I feel like the priest is the most culpable for how Zay ended up.
Well, it's like he's St. Peter barring this guy from entering heaven. Being up there at that top of those steps, and just the constant up and down that keeps going up and down these steps through this entire film. And every time he gets back up there, there's somebody telling him, no, you got to go back down. You are not allowed to enter into heaven here. You cannot ascend fully.
And they're creating the malice in him. Like we've said over and over in this hour, he is the most pure-hearted, focused guy. Let him do it and let him go home. You don't need to have everybody else put their stamp of agreement on you. That's not real emotional or even spiritual maturity. If a priest or a pastor or a bishop, if somebody in spiritual authority cannot abide somebody disagreeing with them, that's a problem.
And that's the thing, is this whole, like, there's no room for debate. Talking about making a flip remark about throwing people out of a window. I can't remember if it was the Council of Worms or Nicaea or Trent or which one of it was, but it's like, literally people have killed over small things. Like, was Christ a man? Was he always a god? Was he?
Yeah, people got burned at the stake if they didn't affirm certain creeds. Yeah, no, it's awful.
Oh, yeah. And poor Zay is just one example of one person who thinks they're doing the right thing and is told time and again. And then, like I said, the story just builds and builds. And pretty soon we've got just all of these people that are outside of the church. We've got the army being brought in. We've got them questioning now, like, when they came up and they're like, where are your papers? And I was like, oh, wow, this feels very 2025.
I know, that was insane. I thought it was a very interesting decision to make the local law enforcement kind of be like level-headed and actually decent guys. Because the local guys, like they brought in bigger guys who were awful, had the guns, had the force, but the local guys, like, he didn't steal, he hasn't hurt anybody. Like, he's just, can you let him in, please? Like, it's causing a public ruckus because he's not being let in. The police went to the priest on Zay's behalf going, hey man, like, this is starting to disturb the peace. I'm not going to arrest him because he hasn't committed any crimes. Let him in so we can get this done. But the priest is like, no, this is my church.
Was relieved that someone was level-headed. But is it just that it is
The local guy, yeah.
I'm curious what happens to Zay's wife after this all takes place. I mean, she's stuck out here in the city, 20 miles from home. No way of getting back other than possibly walking or hitching a ride somehow. But has she fallen under the spell of the pimp? Is she going to be the next girl in his stable?
I don't think so, but that is an interesting open-ended, because like she walked is very powerful and very cinematic. Like it was heightened. Everybody else cleared out, and the final shots are just her slowly walking by herself up the steps into where her husband's final resting is. And also extremely powerful, just imagery.
After she initially slept with him, when she sees him a little later on, I thought she was going to go with him again because he's like smiling and calling her over and she looks tempted. But then when she goes up to him, she's like telling him to like, try to help her husband and like stop all of this. So I don't necessarily think she'll follow that route. Again, if we're leaning into the spiritual aspects, it's like the devil's work is done. He's going to leave him.
Yeah, chaos has been sowed and he's moved on.
It is interesting, too. You talked about how there was a play of it, but there was actually I keep reading different things.
It's a remake about 10 years ago.
There was one from 1998 that I was aware of.
Oh, you posted that in the
I thought I saw
Dropbox.
something on YouTube from 2015, but that could have also been... See, there's so much to be got here. I don't even know for sure. Yeah, 2015, an adaptation of the series shown in 98. So, yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I was reading miniseries, but then I found an hour-and-a-half film version of it, or video, it looks like. Definitely looks like it was shot on video. Unfortunately, that just lends a real cheapness to it, but, it was basically made for TV, it looks like, and you can feel that the sets look nice and everything, but it just doesn't feel as lush, and especially compared to the 62 version, which is just such a pleasure to look at.
It's incredible, yeah.
Yeah, but the 98 version feels much more almost telenovela as far as like the video quality, and then there's much more like the type acting, just like the startled in Spanish, right? Or that that meme of the woman's face and it says startled in Spanish on it.
Literally 100% of the letterbox logs of the 2015 are in Spanish, so it looked like it was some sort of special in 2015, and I can't tell if it was literally just a rebroadcast or a new adaptation with new people.
Yeah, all I see is the miniseries when I Google it.
Well, on Letterboxd, it's called Luz Camera 50 Años and then Pagador de Promessas. So I don't know if it was like a celebration of the legacy of the story, which I didn't know about the story until I got the email from you, Mike.
I like that the way that the 62 story starts, like I said, in media, we've got them already going. Whereas the 98 actually starts with them in the village and the whole thing with Nicholas and everything. And it's like, all right, Nicholas seems okay in this version, but there's also a murder that takes place. And then they make their trek. They're making their trek at the end of the first act, so it's told in a very different way. And I have to say, the 62 version It's an hour and a half long, but God, it zips along. It feels like it is an hour at most. I am absorbed.
Well, there's so many elements to it and layers. And what's incredible to me is like it's done with the utmost simplicity as well. I mean, it just flows and all of these characters come in and out and all these arguments are made, arguments for, arguments against, you got the media, the police officer, all these point of views that I'm like, Jesus, how did they do this without making it like 3 hours like this?
Mike, in some of our last few conversations, very Fuller-esque in its social commentary and pacing.
Yeah, or even like I just recently did a written review for Chaplin City Lights. And I was like, man, this is hard to write about in a way because it's so plot heavy in a good sense. And he's saying so much, but it's so tragic, so funny, and yet so simple. But that was his genius. It's hard to write about because it's that good. And this is simpler. This reminds me of that.
I love the shot at the beginning of the 62 version where it's and I'm sorry, I just keep calling her the prostitute and I keep calling him the pimp, but they're outside of this club and you see the silhouettes inside behind the window of a guy playing the trumpet, another guy maybe playing the drums, and you just get those silhouettes on there. That's wonderful because, I mean, I imagine that they shot that hopefully all MOS. They're not actually playing music in the club and they're just recording the dialogue and then adding in the music later on. The music was great, by the way, in this movie too. But just that nice way of conveying this is a rockin' club by having those silhouettes on the window. And again, the black and white, the cinematography is so lush in this film. And yeah, please, I want to see this on the big screen because it looks great.
Yeah, it did some really cool tricks too. Like when they were filming them through the bars, there were a few great shots. And then towards the end, after Zay had died and they had put him on the cross, the camera being under the cross as it was lifted up, like that would be a stunning, stunning shot. If this got like a HD or 4K restoration on the big screen, that would be a breathtaking shot.
But the character we call the pimp, his name is Bonite,
Mr. Handsome.
And I guess it was like his wife / prostitute, or I think that's Marley. Yeah. So that's the names.
She was so striking.
But they certainly were devilish, like, in a way it was almost caricature, like the way they were just like cackling at the end, the two of them. I think that was intentional, right? Because it's just that another suggestion that there's something, evil at play here from hell or, what have you.
Oh, that was the lady from Planet of the Vampires. I didn't realize that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That was her.
That's amazing. I love how they have the proper parade of St. Barbara, but then they also have the celebration of the African god at the same time. And it's like that one has the native instruments that they're playing. Yeah. And it just goes back to the very beginning, that prelude with the African inspired music. I mean, it's fascinating. I mean, Brazil is a fascinating place as far as all the mixture of cultures that all come together in this one gigantic, country. We forget about how huge Brazil is, but this, we're talking about melting pot, like this bizarro melting pot of all of these different cultures and everything. Bizarro in a good way, like there is always tension in everything, but it's interesting to see the way that tension plays out and to see that tension playing out here in the 62 film. I mean, it's great. It's very similar to some of those Cinema Novo films that I was talking about, where you still get to see like, all right, I found it fascinating too, because it kept saying Macumba all through this whole thing. And I was like, oh, I wonder if that's similar to Macunaíma, which is this other Brazilian film that we watched a couple years ago, where it's like, oh, this is great stuff. I mean, Brazilian cinema for me is such an untapped vein of world cinema that just needs more exploration.
And so often I see something from Brazil, like City of God or Pichotti, and I'm blown away. And you don't see, it's kind of like with the Czech, like, of course, Mike, you're well versed in, there's only so many people talking about certain countries, which gives opportunities for people like us.
The only one other scene you reminded me of a moment ago that was also really great that I think would be even more striking with a great restoration on the big screen is the procession of St. Barbara, like the actual parade, the icon of St. Barbara, the statue, and him walking up side by side. You're like, oh, is he going to sneak in? But like the cutting back and forth and just how effusive he was. He's like, oh, like I'm going to get in. That was just also a very powerful visual scene.
And just the gratitude pouring out of him as he's looking at the statue. I was like, it put me in a spell. I was like, man,
That was it. Like, that's as close as he gets in this film.
Yeah, it is really weird. Sorry to go back to the whole saint thing. I was just remembering, I worked at a cable company right out of college, and we played, local origination commercials. And I remember there was one commercial, and I can't remember what religion it was for, if it was for Eastern Orthodox or if it was for Catholicism or some sort of Protestantism, but it was like, perhaps you've heard of the healing icon of Saint so-and-so. And it's like this whole, like, come to our church and pray to this icon of this saint and you will be healed. And I'm just like, how is that any different than just selling, like you said, selling icons of saints and having your almost like card collection of saints and things? And having a saint for so many different things is so reminiscent to me of like Eastern religions, where it's like, okay, well, there's the god of the kitchen, there's the god of the hearth, there's the god of the entrance to the door. It's so similar for me as like, well, there's the saint of pets, there's the saint of lost causes, there's the saint of this. And it's like, okay, which one are you going to pray to now? Like, you want to sell your house? We'll take Saint Joseph and go bury him in the backyard and do this little prayer, and that way you'll sell your house. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, there's no way that can be condoned. It sounds like voodoo superstition stuff, and it's probably very bad on my part when I talk about things being unknown. I usually say it's voodoo. That's a religion as well. So yeah, I should pay as much respect to them as I do to everybody else.
Thanks for the intro to this movie, Mike. I think that we should all push some of our contacts to take a look at this and maybe put a good restoration out there.
All right, we're going to take a break and play a preview for next week's show right after these brief messages. That's right, we'll be back next week with a look at John Cassavetes' Gloria. Until then, I want to thank my co-hosts, Robert and Philip. So, Robert, what's the latest with you, sir?
Oh, well, as I was saying just before we recorded, I was fortunate to meet the great Charles Burnett recently at TIFF in Toronto, and I made a little video about it, and I recorded his Q&A with the TIFF artistic director Cameron Bailey after the screening of Killer of Sheep, which was just restored by Criterion as a new 4K restoration. So that was a great experience. So you could check that out. And I just dropped an episode today on the film called Humoresque with Joan Crawford and John Garfield, which is a film I love. The Blue it just came out late last year from Warner Brothers Archive. So I just reviewed that today. So yeah, that's the latest 2 episodes, and you can check me out on youtube.com/Robert Bellissimo at the movies, and all of my social media handles are at linktree.com/Robert Bellissimo at the movies, as well as my Patreon page, and my YouTube channel link is there as well.
And Philip, what's going on in your world?
You can find me over at the Substance Podcast. We cover both film on our substantive cinema episodes, and then on our regular episodes, we have professors, historians, faith leaders talking about things of substance. Recently, we covered Panic Fest, which is one of the larger genre festivals in the U.S., held here in Kansas City. Had filmmakers like Joe Lynch and other folks talking about some of their movies and the films that premiered there. Recently had a New York Times film critic, Alyssa Wilkinson, talking about her new book about Joan Didion and John Wayne. And yeah, just a nice variety of folks talking about film and matters of substance at the Substance Pod on the socials and The Substance, wherever you find your podcasts.
So there you go. O Pagador de Promessas. That was my conversation with Mike and Robert. Hope you guys enjoyed. There are somewhat decent versions out there online for you to see. Hopefully we can get a really nice Blu-ray from one of the wonderful companies doing great work out there very, very soon. Like we said at the top, if you're not already, subscribe, follow the show. It's helpful for us. It's helpful for you. If you enjoy the show, let you know when the new ones come out. Hit the 5-star button, write a review, all that good stuff. And the very best way to support the show is to actually share it with other people. If you know somebody who likes film and likes to be that person, hopefully in a good way, who likes to know movies that maybe not everybody does, this is a great one to share with them. Or maybe somebody who is interested in expanding their film knowledge. We'd love to go along with them on that journey. If you want to give us your feedback and let us know what kind of topics, we do a lot of films on the show. But as we're a variety show, any films, topics, types of guests you'd like to hear on future episodes of The Substance, you can contact us at thesubstancepod@gmail.com. Send us your emails, Send us your voice notes. We would love to hear from you. If you are watching along on Letterboxd, if you end up tracking a copy of this movie down and watch it on Letterboxd, use the tag Substantive Cinema, and we will engage with your review. Listener Justin tagged his review Night of the Living Dead, Substantive Cinema. That's a wonderful episode we did a long time ago with Josh Larson from Film Spotting. He had some really good thoughts, but the end I thought was wonderful and succinct. Don't forsake love in the apocalypse. Tag your Letterboxd reviews, Substantive Cinema, and we will engage with them on a future show. Next week, we are hopefully back on. I've got some good Substantive Cinemas and regular episodes. Probably have a regular one. We've done a lot of movies lately coming up in the feed. But if that's not ready, we'll take a week off because we've been publishing a lot lately. So be on the lookout. Follow us on Instagram, and we'll let you know what's coming forward. So until then, I've been your host, Philip Marinello, saying thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time on The Substance.